Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome back. Hello to all of my wonderful subscribers, and hello to all of my new subscribers. I am truly thankful that you guys are here. I remember when I used to hear people say that in the beginning of their videos, and I'm like, okay, let's get to it. Like, all right, thank you, move along. But now I truly understand what that means. Like, I really just want to say thank you because by you guys listening and liking and commenting, we are all working together in this thing to bring more awareness. And that is such a beautiful thing that we are doing. And so I am thankful for that. Also, I just want to say that I see your comments and I read your stories. I may not always get a chance to respond back, but I read your stories and I empathize with you guys. I have been in the nightmare that some of you are experiencing or have experienced. And I just want to say I'm so proud of you. I see your strength. I have prayed over those that were in my comments, and thank you for those that have just been so supportive to myself as well. Thank you so much, guys. God bless you and continue to strengthen and renew your strength. As I always say in my videos or have said, I am not an expert in this area whatsoever. I don't claim to be. However, what I am is a survivor, and I lived everything that I talk about firsthand. I lived that experience. I've gone through a lot of healing, and I still am in the process of healing and deliverance. And I have learned so much about narcissistic abuse in my journey. So I'm not an expert, but these are my stories. This is what I'm choosing to share with you. Another thing to keep in mind is that a 20-minute or 15-minute or 10-minute video of something that I choose to share is only a small portion of my story. So I hope you guys will stay tuned in and keep on coming back because I pray that it's blessing someone somewhere. Let's jump into this video. So as you saw in the title, Narcissistic Abuse Warning Signs, I decided to record a video about warning signs, or you may say red flags, that I noticed in the relationship or the nightmare that I was in. One of my viewers actually commented on one of the videos. She writes, I do have one question. Didn't you see any signs before marriage, or were you completely blindsided? So the quick answer to that question is yes, I saw a few signs before marriage, a ton of signs as soon as we got married. Even with that being said, I still felt blindsided by his abusive behavior and the physical attacks that came shortly thereafter. So I'm just going to quickly go through about 8 things that I think that you should look out for, or 8 warning signs of narcissistic abuse. Or if you would like to call them red flags, I'm going to give you 8 red flags that I noticed based off my experience. Another thing I just want to point out is that narcissistic abuse doesn't necessarily come in one form, because it can look similar in some situations, and then in other situations people can do completely different things. What my therapist taught me was that you have to understand and be able to discern toxic behaviors in general in order to protect yourself from those type of demonic attacks. So I just want to note that that's very important. So the things that I'm discussing today are not the end all be all, especially if you're talking about a relationship versus a friendship versus a boss or someone that you work with. Things that I'm talking about today are based off of my experience with the ex-husband and the ex-abuser. So anyway, number 1, narcissists like to move very quickly. I was married to my ex-husband only after knowing him for about a month. Now, generally, I would not move that fast. I'm a thinker, and I just don't move that fast. However, as you get older, you start to realize, like, okay, you know what you want in life. I know what I want in life. Why wait? We want to do this. Let's go. And that's kind of what it was like. And he mirrored behaviors that he noticed from me. And he sought out to find out my desires and things that I wanted. I allowed myself to fall into his trap and to get married. And so narcissists want to move quickly. They want to bait you in quickly. They want to love bomb you really, really, really hard and strong to get you in there. And even though they know the outcome is not going to be good, yet and still they want to bait you in quickly and try to keep you locked in and stuck. They think that if they secure you into the relationship or the marriage, then they don't have to deal with their own abandonment issues, or they lock in another source of supply and then you become theirs because they think that they own you. So narcissists want to move, they want to move quickly. So if you're dating someone, and they're trying to move quickly, trying to move in together very quickly, or give you the extra key to their house. That was the case in my situation, like on date number 2 or 3, like that's a bit much and that's really fast. So be cautious in a situation like that because they want to lock you in quickly. Warning sign, red flag number 2 is that when they're discussing their exes, either all of their exes are crazy, right? For some strange reason, they're all crazy, or all of their exes want them back. In my case, all of his exes wanted him back. He was never good enough. He played the victim. He told me that everything he did was never good enough. He spent so much time with his ex, but it still wasn't enough quality time for her. And then that later on, she came to him wanting to be back together, but he said no. And so every single ex that he ever discussed, first of all, it would irritate him. He was so aggravated to even talk about any other female, an ex or anything. And they all wanted him back. Which was definitely interesting, but that's a red flag. That's a warning sign. If all of your exes are crazy and you don't have any, situation in which you can take accountability for, that's a red flag. Or if all of your exes want you back, you did nothing wrong ever, and all of your exes want you back, that is definitely for sure a red flag or a warning sign. For the third warning sign, I would say that there was a lack of concern with the family members. So the third warning sign is just like the family members' behavior. I have heard it where the narcissist does not want you to meet their family and friends, which is a red flag or a warning sign. Or on the opposite end, they want you to meet everyone. And in my case, he wanted me to meet everyone. All of the family, it was like a trophy type thing. And he wanted me to meet everyone, and there was no concern from his family as to why we were getting married so quickly. They were very excited, which I thought was like, wow, this is such a blessing. But they were very, very, very excited. No one was concerned. And I had voiced to him that my family was not going to receive the news as well. Like my friends nor my family members were going to be excited. And I was correct. And, for him, he said that they were going to be happy, and happy they were. They were really excited, I guess, to get him off of their hands, or maybe they thought that I could fix him too. I'm not sure, but they were really excited for us to get married. Immediately started asking, when are we having babies? There was no concern for like, how long have you guys known each other? Where did you meet? I mean, they just didn't even ask those kind of questions. They didn't even care. They just were like, okay, yes, y'all are getting married. Okay, great. When's the wedding? And what should we wear? How can we help? And are y'all going to have babies soon? So that's a red flag as well. I would say warning sign number 4 is that they have a sense of entitlement with that grandiose behavior. I remember when we were about to share the news with our family members that we were getting married, I said, well, did you call your parents and let them know that we were on the way? And he was like, no, I don't have to. That's my house. And I was like, okay, but I'm sure they would want to know, that you're coming over. And he was just very adamant, like, that's my house. I have a key. They don't question anything that I do. So no, I don't have to let them know that we're coming by. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting, but maybe that's how his family works. So whatever, okay. And it's not so much that, like, if people are thinking, oh, well, I just stopped by my parents' house too, I don't have to tell them. It's deeper than that. It's the conversation that went with it. Like, oh, I don't have to tell them that. That's my house. It's a sense of entitlement. Like, I don't need to tell them that, which is a huge warning sign, entitled people. That's just not okay. So, that was number 4. Even when I talked to him about, like, hey, my family's probably going to have questions about all of this. And he was like, oh, well, mine won't. They'll be on board with me. They're not going to question any of my decisions at all. And he's absolutely correct. They did not question any of his decisions. And even when we got married, later into the marriage, after the abuse started, and they saw certain things, they didn't question a thing. They are just enablers, and that's just how that goes. So no, there was no questioning his decision. I would say warning sign number 5 is that there is a lack of communication. Narcissists do not communicate because, again, they feel entitled. They don't care about you. They don't care about your thoughts, your opinions. It's all about them. They can only be who they are not for so long. So communicating with you is not something they're going to do throughout the duration of that relationship and marriage. They're just not great communicators. They're not communicators at all. An example of this was when I found out about a month after we had been married that the day after we got married, we didn't go on a honeymoon, and I found receipts from like a shopping trip that he had gone on. And I was so confused because I was like, hey, we were on the phone that day, like throughout the entire day, and you didn't tell me that you went to the outlets and like went shopping and stuff. And, he said to me, oh, it's not a big deal. And I was like, no, yeah, you're right. It's not a big deal. I'm not controlling. I don't have to know every single place that you go, but there's a lack of respect there, a lack of communication. And it was such a huge red flag because things like this were beginning to happen more often, where he would make all these plans for the weekend and we had family plans, or he would be working overtime and not communicating it at all, or until at the very, very, very last minute. So that's a huge red flag in a relationship or in a marriage where people are just doing whatever as if they're not married and not communicating about things that we as adults should be communicating. Lack of communication is definitely a sign of narcissistic abuse as well. Someone who just is absolutely unwilling to communicate. He was unwilling to communicate. He would fake it like, oh, you're right, babe. I understand that I'm married now and I need to communicate when I'm going to work overtime. And then he would turn around and do the exact same thing. He would literally turn around another weekend or whatever and do the exact same thing. So I would say that that's a warning sign as well. And then warning sign number 6, I believe that we're on, is narcissists will have multiple phones, multiple email addresses, and multiple accounts for online dating. That's a huge sign of narcissistic abuse as well. I remember when I first met the ex-abuser, and he had 2 phones, and he always kept them out in front of us, and I could see who was calling or whatever. He had no shame and was not hiding those 2 phones at all. He told me one was a work phone that had not been issued by his job, but it was a work phone, and that the other was his personal phone. About a month into our marriage, I found multiple phones that were fully charged and being used, and that was when I started to uncover his secret undercover life. So that's seriously a red flag and a warning sign when people are hiding cell phones and having multiple phones. Like, for what? Like, why do you need 4 phones? That's a bit much. What are you doing on these phones? And I remember after I found those phones, he ordered another phone. And it came into the mail, and I'm like, why do you have another phone? He said something happened to one of his phones. And I said, okay, well, give me all the phones that something's going on, because we were in counseling at that time. And I'm like, listen, if something's going on with the phones, then all you really need is your new phone. And then he would have 50 million excuses as to why he needed to keep the extra phones. But he was really just turning those phones into the phones that he used for his extracurricular undercover life activities, whereas because he no longer had the multiple phones that I found. So that's a huge red flag if someone has multiple phones and things like that. Another thing that I noticed, and of course this was not before we got married, but it was right after we got married. We would have like a disagreement. We didn't have too many disagreements, honestly, especially in the beginning. You're in your honeymoon phase, or what should be your honeymoon phase, but the love bomb phase had ended as soon as we said I do. But we were having a disagreement. I was actually upset with him. I remember very clearly I was upset with him for his tone and some things that he was saying to me. It was just getting borderline very disrespectful, and he didn't find it wrong at all. He actually was like laughing it off, and I was kind of upset about it. And when I voiced my feelings and my opinions on it, he just left. He just up and left. And I would later find out that that was a pattern of behavior throughout the marriage. He would just up and leave when he was done discussing something, or when he didn't want to hear it from me, or when he wanted to punish me or whatever. He would just up and leave. And so that's a huge red flag. And it's a lack of maturity. Someone who can't handle having an adult conversation about an issue, who can't address anything. That's a warning sign and a red flag. Warning sign number 7, that you are in a situation with a narcissist, is that nothing seems to add up. They think that they're tricking you and manipulating you, but I know that for me, in my experience, nothing made sense. Like, it was just a whole bunch of nonsense. All of the stories about the exes, the stories about his childhood and his life, the stories about his job, just nothing made sense. And I was driving myself crazy trying to figure it out. You are literally sitting there gaslighting yourself and allowing them to gaslight you, unaware, of course, at the time, but it's just a whole bunch of crazy making and word salad games, and you just don't even know what is going on. So many times I would pause and go, wait, what? Like, wait a minute, I thought you said, and he would hate it. He would hate it when I would go, hey, I thought you said, da 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 da. He'd be like, I know what I said, and let me talk and let me finish. And it was just so strange, and nothing made sense. If you are in a relationship and it's never making any sense, I would say red flag. Warning sign for me would be all of the communication from the exes. They were all on his Facebook and Instagram accounts and having all these conversations. I had never seen so many women's names in a cell phone before. It was just unbelievable how many names were in his cell phone. In parentheses, he had where he met them listed. And I remember when one ex reached out and they said, congratulations on your marriage. You could have at least let me get my stuff. And I couldn't believe, I was like, what? Was she here like yesterday? And this was very early on in our marriage. So I know the original question was, were there warning signs before the marriage? But remember, we got married really quickly. So I'm just giving you the warning signs that I started to notice immediately after we said I do, like literally within the first month or two. Everything that I have said in this video happened within the first month or two of our marriage, which means like 2 or 3 months of meeting. So for those of you who did not get married fast and dated for like 6 months, if you are seeing any of these warning signs and red flags, take heed to them and listen to your discernment and just get out, because it is not worth it. So I know that I started seeing so many strange messages from exes that he would either show me or he didn't mind me seeing because it was a part of the whole triangulation thing. But it was so strange that all these females would be reaching out to him. And I'm like, where are they coming from? What is this? Why is the relationship still so relevant? And it was because they never went anywhere. These women had just been shelved without knowing, and he was probably marrying me just to get back at them, and punish some of them. You know, it's a whole cycle, and none of us knew exactly what was going on at that time. But if you see someone who just has multiple women, multiple children by different women, and just crazy things like that, and all these women are reaching out, yeah, that's a huge warning sign and red flag. And then lastly, I would just say another warning sign of narcissistic abuse is that that person does not have any real relationships. I remember before I got married, I said, you know, I have a group of friends that are like my family, and occasionally we do brunch or we do things with the family, but they're a huge part of my life. So they'll be a huge part of your life as well. Are you okay with this? How do you handle that? You know, we were just getting to know each other and talking about, you know, how does that work for you? And he was like, oh, no big deal. I'm the same way. You know, some of the fellas that I've known since college days, and they have their families now. We all hang out. We'll probably do double date stuff, all this nonsense. And in the entire time we were married, y'all, I mean, he doesn't have any friends. There's no real relationships there, no authentic relationships whatsoever, like none. Even with his own family members and his cousins that were his age. I mean, all of it is just, it was just fake. It was just for entertainment purposes. It was, let me showcase and let me perform for you. And that would be it. There was no real relationship. The people that he spoke with on a daily basis were like people he was trying to impress at work. I mean, it just wasn't any real relationships whatsoever. So if you are involved with someone and you're noticing like there's no real relationships that are being sustained here, that's a red flag. That is for sure a red flag. So I just wanted to give you guys just a very brief overview of some of the warning signs and red flags that I saw before the marriage and then immediately after the marriage. The entire time, I continued to ask God to reveal his heart to me and to reveal who he was to me. And God did just that. I just decided to ignore the flags and move too quickly. And so that was my part in it, was marrying someone that I had so many questions and concerns about. My discernment was off. And even though I noticed some things, I wasn't listening to myself. I wasn't listening. I wasn't, I wasn't connected to myself. I wasn't at home and trusting and believing my own spirit and how I felt about things. And I should have, but I did not. And so that's why I'm here today to share the warning signs and red flags with you that I experience. Now, there are more things, but that'll have to come in another video or at another time. But I just wanted to answer that question from one of my listeners. So if this helped you in any way, or if you're blessed by it, or if you can even relate, make sure you hit that thumbs up, share it with someone, and comment down below and just tell me, you answer the question too. Did you, in fact, see these signs before marriage or before the relationship and decide to still stay? Maybe you brushed it off like me, like, oh, okay, well, that's not a big deal. You're right. Or were you completely blindsided? Now, remember, I said that I still feel like I was completely blindsided with everything else, because it went from like 0 to 100 and from crazy, confusing to completely insane and bad really quickly, because I just wouldn't stop questioning things. I'm like, this doesn't add up. This doesn't make any sense. And so, I still felt blindsided by like the physical attacks and abuse of it all, because I didn't see any signs that he was a physical abuser. But I just detailed for you some of the red flags and signs that I saw. So comment down below and share with other people to help out signs that you notice as well, or if you can relate, like I said, comment that down below as well. And I will be back with another video sharing more of my testimony, and hopefully just sharing more information that will prevent someone from living and going through the horrific nightmare that I endured as well. Thank you so much for listening, guys. God bless.